Hi everyone, and welcome to mini lecture 12. Today we'll be discussing APA formatting. Before we begin, take a moment to collect the following materials for the lecture assignment. You'll need a blank Word document to do some writing and access to your current project draft materials. The purpose and goals for today's lecture are as follows. First, we'll discuss the purpose and place for APA. Next, we'll examine different formatting considerations. And finally, we'll examine methods for in-text and reference page citations. The first question we want to answer is, what is APA? If you are in communication or business, social sciences, you've probably used APA before or have probably seen it in your assignment descriptions. APA stands for American Psychological Association. Now, when we think about APA and where it originated from, basically, APA came about because in other formatting styles or other style guides, there was an incorporation of biased language that either discredited the author or sought to discredit the work in a way that wasn't conducive to scholarly conversation. And so APA really just wanted to say, we're just going to strip, this to its bare bones. We're going to emphasize having a more objective type language in our citations and in the way that we format the sources that we borrow from. So like I said, it's commonly used in social sciences and related fields, so psychology, sociology, history, communications, but also you'll see it quite a bit in business as well. So when we think about the basic considerations, what we would always need to include, regardless of if we are citing a tweet, a YouTube video, a scholarly article, a book, we want to try and check as many of these items off as possible when we are using an APA citation. So first, we'll need the name of the authors or the creators. So whose brainchild was this? Who wrote this article? Who put this video together? Who is the speaker at a TED Talk? So again, who are the people involved? You'll also need the full title of the article, and so this is especially important when working with any kind of scholarly article. So you'll need both the kind of catchy title and then the subtitle that follows the colon. You will need all of that in its entirety in an APA citation. What's also important, and this can help with establishing the currency and relevancy of the work, is the date of publication. So for example, if I'm talking about social media, the information that I find from a journal published, let's say in 2008, would be different and look at it through a different lens than, let's say, 2017, simply because things have changed since then, and the information regarding that topic will have changed accordingly. So you always want to make sure that you're including that date of publication in there. You also want to try and include a volume number and an issue number and the publisher. So for journals or for articles, that would be the journal. If you're citing a book chapter, it would be the book. If you're citing a TV episode, it would be the TV show. So things of that nature. Now, when we think about the references page, which is the last page of any written, any academic work that you do, and it basically is just telling your reader, hey, here's where I got all this information. Some very basic considerations is, one, we always want to include a hanging indent. That will make the citations easier to navigate through and to sift through. Rather than having everything left justified, we can pick out the starts and ends of citations a lot faster as readers if there's a hanging indent. References are also alphabetized as well on the references page. So it doesn't matter, if the first article you quote, if the author's last name starts with Z, they're at the back of the list. They're at the very bottom, even if they're the first person that you cite. So looking at some other considerations, all major publications are italicized. That includes journal titles, magazines, movies, TV shows, newspapers, really anything big that often has like smaller components in it. So journals have articles, magazines have articles, movies have scenes, TV shows have episodes, newspapers have articles or columns. And so anything that's kind of a larger means for distributing information. So what's interesting and sort of sets APA apart from other citation styles, especially MLA, is that you do not encase works published in major publications in quotation marks. So if you're, writing an article title or an episode title, in other styles, you would put those in quotation marks to indicate what they are. But in APA, you don't do that. Also, authors are introduced by full name, then referred to by last. So this is incredibly important when you are introducing your sources. So if you were to say, according to Dr. John Smith, blah, 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 and then for the rest of the text, you would say Smith says blah, blah, blah. And so you just want to make sure that when you are referring to an author using APA in the body of your work, you introduce them first by full name whenever that is, whenever you first introduce them. It could be the second to last paragraph. You still include the full name, and then any reference to that author and their work, you just go by last name. So first, let's look at some design and formatting considerations with print-based sources. So if we've got books here, you can see here that we've got the author, and now these are all citations for the references page. I do want to preface this next section of the lecture with that in mind. So with this, we want to write last name and then first initial. And then we'll go on to year of publication in the parentheses, the title of the work. We also want to include a capital letter for the subtitle as well, the location of where it was printed, and the publisher. Again, this is another interesting thing that sets APA apart from other style guides or citation guides, is that in guides like MLA, we would, looking at this example here, we would capitalize the C in comes and E in everybody and the P in power and the O in organization. So, but in APA, we don't do that. We just capitalize the first letter that we've got for the main title and then here for the subtitle. So we've got Shirky, comma, C, 2008, here comes everybody, the power of organizing without organizations. Then we've got the location, New York, and the publisher, which is Penguin Press. With journals, it'll look kind of similar, but one thing that's important to keep in mind is that oftentimes journals include multiple authors. And so, you might have to include more than one name. And so in doing so, you would go last name, as we see here, last name, first initial, then of the second author, last name, first initial, and so on and so on. Then we've got the year in parentheses, similar to how we did with the book. The title of the article, remember, not encased in quotation marks. Title of the periodical, so journal in this example. And then we'll have the volume number and then the issue number in parentheses and the pages. And if relevant, or if you've got it, the DOI number or the link to the article itself. Now with scholarly journals, that's a little bit more difficult just because you often have to basically pay to read these things. Now you guys already have paid for it through your student fees, but just providing the information like the author name and the title of the work usually is just plenty of information for someone to go and locate that article in a way that's accessible to them. So we see here we have Dahlberg, comma, L, 2005, then we've got the title of the article, the Habermasian and Public Sphere, colon, taking difference seriously, and then we've italicized the title of the periodical, Theory and Society. We've got the volume, the issue number, and the pages that we could find it on if we were to go look in that specific journal. And we can see a similar approach with magazines as well. And now this is where we start to see the two author consideration come up. So we've got Barcott, comma B, Schur, comma M. So we have two authors who worked on this piece and who published this work. And so really it all comes down to whose name is listed first. This is not reflective of alphabetical order. You always want to present in your references page, and whenever you reference a work of someone else in your own writing, that you write the names, the order in which they appear on the article itself. So then we've got the year of publication in parentheses. We've got the Great Health Experiment, so the title of the article, the title of the periodical time, and we've also noted that it's a special edition, so it doesn't have a volume number or an issue number like a typical publication of Time would, but it's a special edition. And then we've identified the page numbers within that magazine of where we could find that article. Let's now move on to digital sources. And one thing that I do actually want to point out before we move on is that even though you will be finding your scholarly articles from online databases, we still want to treat them as print-based sources in this respect. So if you find a really cool article from the Journal of Broadcast Journalism, you would still cite it as if it is a print journal, even if you find it on JSTOR or Academic Search Ultimate or another online database. We still treat it as print-based. Okay, so now moving on to digital sources. Specifically, we want to look at websites and blogs. So when we cite a website, first and foremost, we have the publishing organization or the author. Websites typically don't identify who designed or authored them. Rather, you would give credit to whoever the company or organization is. So, for example, we have here DSU Women's Resource Center, and that's going to function as our author. Then, of course, we have the year of publication, and then the specific page that we're looking at, mentoring and support. But what's important with websites, since oftentimes they are readily accessible to any user, unlike the academic journals, we want to include the words retrieved from and then include the URL to the site. And so in that way, it takes us directly to the web page that we're referencing. We'll see something similar with blogs. Now with blogs, we can identify an author pretty easily, unless it's an anonymous blog. But in this case, we would treat it like a magazine, a journal article, a book, where we do the last name, comma, in the first initial. So Caraway, comma, A. And then with blogs, because they are published at such a quick rate typically, it's important, and I think this is one of the only times where you actually include the month and day as well. So here we've got 2017, comma, September 27. Then we close the parentheses and we include the title, so how we've been teaching the most important thing wrong. And then similar to what we did with the website, we include the text retrieved from and then include a link to the site itself. Preferably the exact page that we pulled the blog post from. Let's now talk about in-text citations. With APA, it's pretty straightforward, which is really nice. Other styles can get a bit complicated, but APA, again, they just like to keep it simple, straightforward, no messing around. So remember that your in-text citation is going to serve as a visual signal for readers. So what it says to your readers is, okay, we're departing from what the writer, or you as the writer, is saying, and we are moving into the thought of someone else. So this is also your opportunity to say, hey, if you're interested in this little bit of information, you can go and find the citation in my references page. And it's kind of an easy way to call to that information, on the references page where it's more fleshed out. So that's why we include in-text citations. When we do that with APA, again, fairly straightforward, you include the year of publication in parentheses after you introduce the author or lead information. So we see here, according to Caraway, parentheses 2017, then ... and then we could quote her, paraphrase her, summarize her, however we're going to approach that. We could also say the most recent studies from the CDC 2018 indicate, and then quote, summary, paraphrase, however we approach that. And so you can see how these do serve as visual cues to the reader to say, okay, we're no longer going to be hearing from the original words of this writer, but they are going to cite Caraway, or they're going to cite the CDC. And then we would include the information that we're borrowing from those places. So here's what I'd like you to do with the lecture assignment. I'd like you to review your current project materials and identify one source in your work. So that can be, if you're on project 1, that can be the artifact that you are analyzing. Projects 2, 3, 4, and 5, any source that you found to inform your perspective or that you want to use as evidence or an entry in your annotated bib. So once you've identified that source, I want you to, using the considerations discussed, cite the source using APA style, and then you'll just include that on your weekly homework submission. All right, everyone, so that does it for this lecture. If you have any questions or if there are any concepts I can speak further to, please don't hesitate to contact me. Okay, everyone, until next time.